Dive into the dynamic world of entrepreneurship, innovation, and business with CapLander, hosted by Jody Thielander and Morgan Thielander of J. Thielander Consulting. Whether you're invested in the private capital markets, building your own venture, or curious about the entrepreneurial spirit, this podcast unpacks the latest trends, insights, and opportunities shaping today's market and the people driving what's next. CapLander connects the dots between personal and professional life because how you do anything is how you do everything. Featuring expert guests, deep discussions, and a dynamic mother-daughter duo, CapLander is your go-to resource for staying informed and inspired.
Hi, Morgan. Nice to be with you in Austin.
I know, right? We've been here for 6 hours.
We've been here for 6 hours, and we've already had a couple rounds of tacos.
Okay, well, that's the best welcoming. One of the fun things about being pregnant is that you're taking care of me until I am no longer of service to you once I deliver you your grandchild. But I was greeted off the plane because I had an early flight, and pregnancy, especially in the morning, I have had to eat.
Yeah.
And I ate on the jet bridge getting onto the plane. But you and I are texting and you're like, I'm eating a breakfast for
you asked me because your flight was delayed.
Right.
And I was in the Austin airport for about 45 minutes longer than you, an hour, and I hadn't eaten anything. So there was a place where I could see they were making breakfast tacos.
Yeah.
Like scrambled eggs and bacon and avocado and cheese. And I have to say, it looked pretty darn good. So the biggest decision I had to make this morning was whether I wanted flour or corn tortillas with it.
Yeah. When you texted me and I was like, I'm on the struggle bus, like I need something. And the plane, had two very large people next to me and I was in the window seat and I was nauseous. And I was like, this is not working out for me. So I ate 2 packets of pretzels. And when I saw your text message, I was like, I need something to eat.
Is that like fat shaming when you say large people?
They had seatbelt extenders. So I think it's just factual.
Yeah, seatbelt extender sort of sets the own tone. Okay,
right.
So we had that.
Yep. So I got off the plane and there were 2 breakfast tacos waiting for me, 1 corn and 1 flour tortilla.
Right, perfect.
Big win. But we did sit and we had breakfast at the airport.
Yes, then we have progressed our way through.
Yes.
I just bought a Willie Nelson for President t-shirt, which I thought was kind of fun.
Yep. It is fun. I like Austin. It kind of reminds me of Madison, but the Texas version.
Yeah, it's got a nice vibe and people are, very low key. And I think also with a lot of business going on, which is in part why we're here, because tomorrow we've got a live recording, a podcast with, I guess we'll leave it with Karen, Coach Karen.
Yep.
And she had been on ours, but it's fun because she likes to have people in her studio. And we've never done that before.
No, it will be our first time on somebody else's podcast in person.
Yeah, fun.
Which is very fun.
Good.
I think the only other thing to really touch on just from news of what's been happening is there's been 2 pieces. One is that tech companies are talking about how have they spent all their budgets for 2026 on AI.
Right.
And how they're looking at their budgets and they're seeing that it's actually more economical to keep workers versus paying so much for AI. It's not as inexpensive as they thought.
Well, I mean, there are all kinds of layoffs that have been announced and streamlining. And I think that's one thing separate and apart from actual layoffs.
Right. Well, it's really comes down to it's the unknown. And I think a lot of companies jump at the fact, especially public corporations, where they can save money.
Right. Trim the fat.
Right. And so they're
going to take off the seatbelt extenders.
Take off the seatbelt extenders.
Under companies.
Right. And AI is very promising because it can make your job more efficient. It doesn't necessarily replace the job, but I think there's been companies who have swung hard in the other direction who are going, oh, wait, we cut too many people.
Yeah, so they want to have some stability.
Right. But we'll publish more of that in our data drop this week or next week. We'll see when it comes out. And I guess the only other thing I read over the weekend and I shared with you, but we're Beckham fans, big Victoria Beckham fans.
The article was in the Wall Street Journal magazine and had Victoria Beckham on the cover. And I think from many angles, one is a woman who clearly has had a lot of visibility and built a fashion brand and was at many points along the way, needed cash, and the company was not in the black. The company was in debt. And then, of course, everything around her family and a child who has been, I think, challenging, that's not having a conversation with she and her husband. What is it, Brooklyn Beckham, is estranged from his family, which we all can appreciate as a mom. But the thing that I loved about the Beckham article is that she talked about a deal that she's just done with the Gap, a co-branded deal. And, I always feel that way at Thielander, that there's certain things that, like, Victoria Beckham sells in a Beckham store or at her retailers, high end. And then she's going to do more to the masses, people who would not ever be able to afford or may not want to spend the money to go at the Gap, so that there's more of a cultural distribution and she can get it out to more people who can afford it, but still get her taste on things. I myself went on and bought a trench coat for $330. I bought the co-branded Gap Victoria Beckham. So we'll see. But
I saw all of it. I mean, I'm off the market for all these things because
I could wear a trench coat.
I could wear a trench coat. Well, I could probably wear a trench coat.
I got one, perfect. One for the family. Yes.
Right, exactly. I think it's so true, though, because it's a fine line, because you don't want to dilute the brand.
Right.
But at the same
time, doing it someplace else on somebody else's platform with your name, which is something that we're exploring right now on a couple of fronts, I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I think as long as you're very mindful and you're very strategic about how you're doing it and what you're putting out. She put out hoodies, like Gap Victoria Beckham, and it's the hoodies and it was the hats, like almost more streetwear stuff.
Yeah, the stuff that she likes too.
Right, which is not necessarily like when you see the zipper on the back of a dress, you see the Beckham dress. Like they're two completely different. I
love that dress.
Yeah, and also her makeup.
Okay, I love her makeup, hands down. I mean, I bought her makeup in London, and then I bought it online because I saw a social media ad. Right. And I would agree that her eyeliners are literally the best.
Perfect.
Yeah, perfect.
Well, they said, all right, well, that's my last piece. I do see a lot of synergy because we always joke that you're sporty spice and she's posh spice, so it's obviously a little bit different. But when I read the article, what really reminded me as like a CEO to CEO is she's very meticulous and she's paid attention to all the details. She's really held steady. She held steady through ups and through downs. And when she took on an external investor for the brand, it was like it had to be the right partner. And she waited until it was somebody.
The guy who invested in her, his wife loved her dresses. Right. So no, I get it. I really have a lot of respect for her. And in some ways, she teaches us all. So reading that article, especially for someone like you who feels at times maybe doesn't have the same wisdom with depth perception because you haven't been doing this for 30 years, that there are those of us that truly believe in our brand and we built a whole a fortress around it. And God help us, no one is going to take us down.
No,
don't fuck with me, right?
Not today.
I dare you.
Right. Not today, Satan. Well, the luxury piece of it and the fashion piece is what leads us into our guest today, who's Ashley Maurice. And she is, I want to say, one of the head buyers at the Vault in St. Louis. If you have not listened to our previous episode with Laura Maurice, who is one of the daughters of the business, one of the owners, she really touches, it's a little level down in the sense of not as much about the business piece, but what pieces are worth buying, what holds their value.
What pieces of clothing and handbags.
Everything.
Yeah, everything.
And jewelry and what's worth investing in.
Yeah,
so
fun.
We're excited to have Ashley join us.
Perfect.
Ashley, we're so excited you're joining us today from the Vault.
Yes, thanks for having me. Hi, Morgan. Hi, Jody. How are you guys?
We're so good. Well, I tried to dress for the occasion. I stood there in my closet saying, what is going to be acceptable here? And am I going to try and, I went the old school way, but first of all, why don't you introduce yourself and tell the audience where you're sitting and what your job is, because you have a very special, unique title and I think eyes on what the fashion marketplace is.
Yes. So, of course, thanks for having me. Ashley Maurice here at the Vault Luxury Resale. Believe it or not, I've been here for 13 years. I am now one of the managers specializing in buying authentic luxury goods. And to be honest, and we can dive into that, I've been all over the Vault Luxury Resale when I started 13 years ago to where I am now and how that developed.
But tell us, I think what we'd love to really focus on here is what in resale, what holds its value, what people should be shopping for, where your surprises have been, like, what has emerged as a brand.
Well, I think part of it too, I mean, you are our first repeat guest because we've obviously had Laura on, and Laura is not only one of the daughters of the vault, but also one of the owners. And so I think it would be helpful for the audience, for somebody who hasn't listened to that episode yet, who's unfamiliar with the vault. And of course, you, because Laura did give me a little tip ahead of time that your career path has been quite unconventional. And she did tell me to ask you specifically about working in a gas station.
Yes. Okay.
I don't even know this. Good for you, Morgan.
No, so this is funny, and not a lot of people know that very, very intro of me coming into the vault world, the luxury world as we know it. Coming to the Vault Luxury Resale and my start into the luxury world was very much an interesting start. Always in family. It was a family matter, which I know some of Laura's podcast was also about. I was dating.
Which of course, we can relate to, Morgan being my daughter. We're all about the family business.
Of course, you guys know. I was dating Laura's son, and they needed holiday help. They had asked me if I wanted to work holiday time. At that time, I was working at a gas station in a tiny town of 600 people. I kid you not. About an hour outside of St. Louis. I was delighted. I knew nothing about luxury or hardly anything about fashion. I loved people. I loved customer service. And it was a seamless fit, believe it or not.
What were you doing at the gas station? Were you the checkout person?
Yeah, I was a gas station clerk. We kind of traded roles each shift. You kind of did a different department in the gas station. There was a deli. I would slice deli meat. I would,
oh my gosh, good for you.
Stock the fridge. Yes, absolutely. So I unfortunately,
there's no shame in any of that, because when I was in Buffalo, I worked at the grocery stores, first in produce, and then I was a checkout person, which I loved. And like what you're saying, I had to move around and did a lot of different jobs. So I think that's actually the customer service piece at the most basic level, is where you get to. And Morgan, you worked at the car wash. I mean, we've all done these jobs.
Yeah, my first job was at the car wash in my hometown, and I was the greeter, and I was the person who would help somebody figure out what car wash they wanted, and then I would say goodbye, and then they'd go through the car wash, they'd drive their car through, and then all the services would happen from there. But you learn a lot about people when you're in a grocery store, a gas station, a car wash, because every single type of person needs gas, groceries, and a car wash.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. And I have to say, jokingly, I know more about brands of cigarettes than I should because of the gas stations. That's the funny takeaway.
All right. So then you worked at the vault for, obviously you came in because Laura is one of the owners of the vault. So her son, that's how you got introduced. Boyfriend at the time. I know from this that boyfriend becomes husband. So the holiday time must have turned
that's
into
not my trajectory anymore, but no boyfriend husbands. But I'm sure that makes sense to a lot of people. My boyfriends just become ex-boyfriends, and then we move on to another boyfriend. But who's to talk, right?
There's no right path.
Right.
There's not one way. That is very true.
That is for sure now.
All right. So tell us. So you worked holiday.
Yeah. Sorry. So moving moving from holidays, they learned very quickly they could not live without me. They said, you have to work here full time. What will it take to pull you into full time? And at that time, I had to drive an hour to and from work. And so it integrated my whole life into the vault. Slowly, we moved to the city. It was made known that I was going to be in the family, whether he wanted me in the family or not. I mean, we love each other, but it was funny. It was love at first sight. You know, his family, right. You guys know Laura and Diana and Sue.
And the vault. It was all love at first sight. It was a very integrated, holistic.
Absolutely.
So fast forward into the vault, and what's the first thing you realized about the luxury resale business?
It was brilliant. The growth had no ceiling. I mean, it truly, the resale industry is tracking more growth and growing faster than the retail market is currently. I mean, it was the time that Sue had launched the business concept here in St. Louis and to where we are now, it was such prime time. And it changed the way everybody thinks about fashion. And I really got to witness that. I mean, it was a beautiful time to be a part of the vault. When I started, they had resale royalty. They had the
Right.
TV show that they were filming, into the launch of our social media.
The way that people buy has changed so much over the last 13 years of being in. And you obviously have an online presence. I think part of it too is how not only how resale has changed, but how people find resale. And also, resale is such a hot market because now people, if you like, this is, we've talked, Jody and I have talked about this with the new Chanel. It's unbelievably it's expensive. North Some of the new bags are north of $10,000. I'm assuming, and this is what kind of the next question is, so what are the items that people consign the most? And what are the items that hold the most value? So I would think it's going to be brands Chanel, Hermès, Birkin bags, but what do you see come in where you're like, okay, these are hot items?
Yes, your core pieces. I mean, you nailed it. You absolutely said it. I think a lot of people know Hermes is obviously going to be one of. I mean, the Birkin bag and the Kelly outperform the S&P 500. I mean, it for the
Although I
Birkin.
just read today in the Wall Street Journal that for the first time there's been a dip in the Hermes stock. So, but I'm sure that is only marginally impacting the resale. Is probably even more of a with the discounts, it makes more sense. Okay, so
Yes.
you've got Hermes. What's another top
Chanel.
brand? Chanel.
I want to say too, I think not enough people dive into a little more specifically. It's not just any Birkin or any Kelly either. I think a lot of people think, oh, I'll just go buy the most affordable one on the resale market, and then it's going to increase so much in value. It is specifically the smaller sizes that are retaining so much value as far as investment goes.
You mean
But
over
for
the bigger, like a smaller bag versus a bigger bag?
Correct. Like the Kelly, was it the Kelly 25 mini, and then you also have the Birkins, Birkin 25 and Birkin 30.
Okay.
Right.
What about on
So
the Chanel side? Which bags are see,
the
Morgan, you were
classic
so
flap.
upset with me that I got rid of the big Chanel bags, but it sounds like what you're saying, Ashley, is that it is that the bigger bags are a little more cumbersome, so the smaller bags are easier to plug and play for everybody.
Correctly. And I would say small to medium, I think, is where you want to land generally with any investment. Small to medium. Micro bags are going to fall in and out of trend, in and out of
Yeah.
play, as well as the larger bags. I mean, I do think they have a much more business front, but the Chanel classic flap, I mean, that's 100% always going to be your best investment in Chanel. Double flap always is going to play better investment wise than a single flap, but that's personal preference.
Right.
Got it.
And then black
Okay.
and
Well,
gold. You have to have a black and gold Chanel. There's no other. Silver can drop. Believe it or not, silver can drop your bag's value by on the resale side of things by even $1,000. It's people
Really?
want the black and gold.
Yeah. See, I like black and gold
it looks
hardware in
richer.
general.
It looks like it's more money. You look richer with the black and gold versus
It,
the silver is a little cooler.
it's a
The
little
gold
more
looks
look
like
at me,
money.
that's for sure. It's a
Right.
gorgeous, but the black and gold's fabulous.
Okay, so we covered Chanel, we covered Hermes. Louis Vuitton is third. Okay, so I mean, what do you think about quiet luxury versus having the logos on the brands? Where do you see that come into play?
I mean, I think it comes from all over. People get tired of the same thing, and I think people can become very overstimulated by the flashiness of bold monograms and in your face luxury pieces. But I do believe that those classic core staples are always going to hold a better investment. They're going to stand the test of time more than the subtle luxury is going to.
Interesting.
Um, I think the subtle
Yeah.
luxury will be beloved. I think it's incorporated. I think people have really come around to that, concept. I just don't see, I think for the masses, it is always going to be more beloved to have that never full monogram
That's a
or
bag I was
the,
thinking about, like those classic bags that are not pretentious. They're just sort of old school plug and play, and they fill a void in everybody's travel or, running around during the day. And they are considered just staples if you can afford it. And if you can't afford a new one, then the resale is a really great place to
yeah.
to be able to get it. And then what other brands sort of have popped up that are starting to be, staples?
Believe it or okay, Coach. I'm gonna say it here and say it loud. Coach, we just looked at so the Coach Gramercy tote. Coach has had such a resurgence. The Gramercy tote was selling on a secondhand market, a very renowned secondhand market like we are, for $50 less than retail. And several of them are. I mean, the Coach bags are really
For $50, wouldn't you just rather go buy a new one?
if you can get it. I think
Is
that's
correct.
part of it. Some of
yeah.
these, yeah, that's part of it is that I've seen, I think Coach has done, I have,
You do. We
I have
bought one for you, Morgan.
I do. I have a mix of purses, and I have to say every single bag I've bought over the last couple of years has been, I mean, honestly, frankly, from the vault. And I can think of one I bought was a monogram Louis Vuitton bag in pink. And it was like a
Ooh,
collector's
denim.
type of
So
item,
good.
right? It
Yeah.
was a pink denim, and I could not resist. And on the other hand, I have also bought new bags, and those have been like Tory Burch and Coach, which have
Yeah.
been obviously less expensive than if I were to walk into the Louis Vuitton store and buy a new bag, but also I get just as many compliments on those as I do my designer bags.
Well, it shows you that high-low game is really important in everything that
Yes.
we do, right? Mixing in a basic T-shirt with a designer jacket and making sure that you have range with your bags. I mean, I'm so old school, I'd call them your pocketbook or your purse, but it's really, what you
I
call
love that.
is a bag the right name today, or can you
It
use
is. Bag,
pocketbooks
handbag,
like yeah,
bag,
handbag.
handbag. I think probably more handbag.
Yeah,
Um, but those two, yeah, I mean, so there's some unexpected, and to mention that, which is crazy, Tory Burch, the Radziwill, the signature
yeah.
Radziwill comes in several sizes. Believe it or not, that larger size now retails for $1,400. Some of these middle range players
Gotten
aren't
expensive.
middle range anymore. I mean, they're really making these leaps to kind of cross that barrier. And then Chanel, I know not to wrap back, Chanel just had a price increase again.
They do
Yeah.
this though. Don't they do this just so that it makes their products less affordable to more people and it becomes more exclusive because they're not increasing the quality?
No, I think Chanel, you're correct. I think Chanel is trying to reach towards an Hermès status. I don't know if they wish to go all the way, but I do know Chanel wants to be more exclusive, harder to get. Um, you have to know somebody. You have to
Yeah.
have an advisor. You have to have a client
Person.
specialist at a particular boutique that can get you that bag.
Otherwise, if you walk in, they're not gonna let all the good stuff is hidden.
Of
Well,
course.
no. It's like the same thing as the Hermes game, right? Like you have to buy jewelry and scarves and accessories and
Correct.
shoes and you have to play the game before that you
Yes.
even remotely get invited back to buy the
Yes.
bag or whatever. Like it's such an honor. And they show you the one of like, would
Great.
you like,
For what?
here's the
What's the
one
minimum
limited bag.
Hermes bag? Like $30,000 or something.
Correct, correct, and it's specifically what they offer you, but there's a lot of people that go on the Hermès journey. We call it the Hermès journey, and you'll see a lot of Hermès on the resale market that is pristine just because people are going on the journey to get that one bag.
Right.
Right.
What has replaced the middle? Like if Tory Burch has climbed up the ladder, what's come in that's new? Coach is retro because that has, like you're saying, had a resurgence. Is there any
Yes.
new label that's come in that's really holding value on the resale market?
And my facts may be a little bit off here. I think Stod bags, I will say Stod bags do very well for us. I believe they're more on that newer side of things. I think it plays on that whole Fendi baguette, which is absolutely
Yeah.
beautiful. We used to love those Fendi baguette beaded bags are incredible. But Stod, fabulous, not just in clothing, but in their handbag selection. Cult Gaia is a
Right.
really fun new one that we cannot keep in, especially for the season. APC, and again, these
Yeah.
are all a little more
They
established.
are
There are
more
a
kind of,
million.
they also, what's I think interesting about all things that you just mentioned too is they started with the clothes and then they went into the accessories from there versus like Louis Vuitton and and Fendi, they started with the bags and then moved more into clothes. And I think that's kind of where it was. When you start with the clothes piece of it, you're able to see what the gap is for your line to accessorize, and then where the price point comes in because you have visibility into what somebody's buying to wear. And I do like that piece of it, especially with the styled pieces, is their prints are really fun and the bags completely complement the brand in that way. So one of my last questions here is, does the color of a bag make a difference? Like, I'm guessing like Louis Vuitton.
1,000%.
Yeah. Okay. So what bags, like in terms from a color perspective, hold the most value versus don't?
The more you can wear a piece, the more somebody will spend money on it. So your core chocolates, cognacs, browns, neutrals, beige, cream, and then black.
Right. And
They-
does this correlate? Like, you're wearing green today, which we know is always, I mean, I've had that color and I wear that color, and behind you are all these pinks and the reds.
Yes.
What do you think is the most on point right now in terms of resale for the clothing in terms of color?
Right now we are seeing a genuine uptick in what we're calling dopamine hues. And so there are a lot of people that, even if it's one piece, I have every shade of black and every single kind of color, but we're seeing even those people jump out and grab a hot pink blazer because why not, to wear it that one time, something that's just incredibly expressive. And then activewear, aloe, Lululemon, Viore. I mean, these are core pieces that they're not just activewear anymore. Those are your basics.
Yes. My
Skims,
mother
cinnamon
wears
shells.
Lululemon like it's a staple in her clothing, and she is not wearing this as activewear
It's
at now
not.
I'm odd years old. No.
I mean, I would say almost the activewear part of it is maybe an outdated trend at this point. But yeah,
Right.
those are investment pieces too. I mean, the
And
aloe is
people are
selling
reselling.
better.
You can resell anything on the
Yes, that's the
activewear.
beautiful part. And then, finding a place that works for you. Obviously, we buy outright, which is an incredible model. Not a lot of people jumped on that bandwagon. They're doing more of the consignment and, you get paid when it sells. But having that, here's the instant cash
Right.
payout for, items you're done with in your closet, that's
Right.
fantastic.
What items do people never sell that they just hold on to? Like I could tell you what bags I went to Japan last year and their secondhand market is unbelievable. And you did start to notice in being all these stores, like I did not see a lot of Celine bags. I did not see any Bottega bags, and I didn't see any Loewe bags. And just from even being on your website on a weekly basis, it doesn't seem like those brands are necessarily items that people are willing to part with.
I think it is going to be very dependent with sort of your sourcing a little bit too, and what your clients in each city or even, region, country are looking for. I do think Japan is certainly ahead of us and what they're investing in and what they're looking for. I think you'll see that shift. They're not letting go of Loewe and Celine, because and Bottega specifically, because they are a bit more quiet luxury and they are selling a lot more of that Louis
Right.
and Gucci and some of those flashy pieces where we eat that up right now. I think a lot of people are still on the flashy monogram, and that's why you're going to see more of it. More people want it. I think people are holding on to Chanel a lot more because of all those rapid price increases. And their jewelry. I know it's all about handbags, but the raising prices of gold and just the jewelry market in general. I mean, obviously, still silver and diamonds and gemstones. The rising market of that, people are really holding on to it, and it doesn't take up as much space in the closet. And so it's not, you don't need to necessarily make a ton of space when you're, storing your jewelry.
Right. And talk about from a value perspective too, you can always melt gold. So if you have it and you're not wearing it, you can always turn it
With
into
the
something
Chanel
else.
jewelry, because I have some, and it's a mix of what I bought on consignment and also new, and it's not real, but it's still expensive, but it can take any basic outfit and make it look expensive because then you've got the pop of the seas or something else in there. So and that is definitely still luxury, and it's not screaming luxury.
Yes. We all know, I think in fashion too, just as much as anything, like fashion repeats itself, history repeats itself. Someone was asking about the other day the long Chanel necklace that's the beaded, and
Right.
long necklaces disappeared a little bit. Everything disappears and kind of resubmerges eventually. A daughter or granddaughter sees an old picture of mom, and they're like, "I want that
Gotta
top."
hold that's the thing,
They're
that Morgan tells me this all the time, how many I've heard from her over and over, "You never should have sold the this or the that." I think that's a perfect way to wind up because it shows you that it's all what goes around comes around in more ways than one, not just with karma, but also with fashion, and that
correct.
sooner or later, especially with the jewelry, you'll know you'll always, quote, "fit in it," and so
Yes.
yeah, or
People
that
are
someone
now wearing
want
those Chanel ones as belts. They want them as belts right now. And I was like, "Oh, that's fantastic and
that makes
brilliant."
sense.
And if you would have thought of that just ahead of, it's hard to be, but I think some of the best investments you can make is if you can be just on the edge of that trend before
Right.
it skyrockets. I mean, what's the city bag, the Balenciaga city bag that
Yep.
everybody is just, dreaming of right now that are selling for 1,000 to say 1,500, depending. Um, do you know that 2 years ago we were selling those for $400 and $500 a piece?
Well, they had a controversy. Right.
Yes.
I remember being in your store and I asked Laura, I was like, I'm sitting on Balenciaga bags. And if I wear a Balenciaga bag out right now, somebody is going to be like, oh, how dare you do this?
I
But
did.
now, like they're everywhere all over again. And I think that's
Yeah,
part of it
so
is
you
that
gotta hold on. I sold
right.
bags back in the day because I needed the money, and now if you
No,
can, you're
you
better off.
wanted the money for it. You didn't need the money on it. You wanted the money for something new and different.
Yes.
Exactly, so that's the trade-off, and I think the takeaway here is to think long and hard about it because sooner or later, it's all going to come back in style, and if you buy good, really with any name brand, there's going to be a resurgence somewhere along the line.
Absolutely. There is. And it's knowing, are you buying your items to just wear them, to enjoy them, and then you sell them when it's out, when you're bored of it, when you're done of it, you sell them, move on to something new. Or some people are just they collect, they're collectors. They want to hold on to it for a period of time, glass box it. Some people just want the trendy stuff, what's trending right now, and then move
Right.
on or,
Flip it.
you know, yeah.
The
So the
other word for collectors is a hoarder. That's that's the other word. Collector's just
No,
a really nice word for a low key hoarder. I don't know if
but
you hoard.
also it also plays into what you said, and is that the closet space, there is a premium on your, real estate in your closet, and there's only so much
Yes.
space to go around, so at a certain point, you gotta make decisions like, "Am I gonna wear this? I haven't worn it, and then can something else new come in?" Well,
Correct.
I'm excited, I'm coming to St. Louis tomorrow, so we're definitely gonna do
Yeah,
a lap around the vault, and I
that'll
hope
be
that
fabulous.
we get to say hello. I know that Laura said she might be in Nashville on a buying trip, but I'll circle back with her.
Yeah,
Yeah. Thank you for joining us, Ashley, and sharing all of your insights.
of course.